One of my favorite things to be asked after I've been a complete basket case on stage is, what do you actually do? And of course, by that, most people mean, what do you do for money? The short answer is freelancing. The long answer is the rest of this video. Hi, I'm Kate. I'm an artist, and sometimes I give unsolicited advice. And first of all, I want to get this out of the way. I am not here to sell you a course, okay? We have not made sponsor level stuff yet. And I am not here to tell you you're gonna make over 100K, because I don't make that, clearly. This is my honest experience with freelancing, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. But before I get into any advice about how I think you should get your first client or how I would approach freelancing if I was starting in 2024, I think it's important to give you some background on my journey and where I am now to see if this is even something worth you listening to. Anyway, this is my journey. I did not take a course and get rich. I left high school right as some of us do, and I had a vague idea of what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't want to go to school, and I saved up a bunch of money from working after school. So I had a couple $1,000s in savings ready to go. I decided to pack my bags, come to New York City with a vague idea of doggies or music or a combination of the two, because I love both of those things, and I still love both of those things. Shortly after I got to the city, I had been doing some dog walking, and I realized, I don't think dog walking is going to cut it in New York City on its own. There are people who do it. I was not one of them. I mean, I did it, but it couldn't suffice for my whole income. So then commenced my series of odd jobs. I applied for a lot of places online. Even back in 2018, I couldn't get a job this way. So I took my little resume to a bunch of different places. I got a job as a barista. I left that job in a couple of months because I get bored, and then I started working at a vet hospital, which was really cool, and I'm sure I could have built a career there, but I got bored and stressed. So then I was kind of sad because I was like, man, I'm not happy. I feel like I keep not finding the right fit for me. And I had a whole little crisis there. And then I thought, maybe it's not the job, maybe it's the community I need to be around. So I started working at Guitar Center, which was my longest normal job in New York City. I worked in the warehouse. That is a box. I carried a box. After carrying boxes all day, I would also do some dog sitting. I would also make music for my artist project. But as we know, the music industry does not pay artists. Even more so now. We just keep going downward in that direction. But that's fine. Whatever. Anyway, doing those things after the fact. Somewhere around this period, I meet my now partner, Matt, who introduces me to freelancing. And by that, I mean he's a freelancer I didn't know that could exist for people. He also does not have a college degree. So I was like, great. How do I do this? So I basically just looked at what are the freelancing things that I can get into easiest by leveraging some skills that I already have. That ended up being writing and producing meditation music. So I started doing that. That's how I got my first initial clients. And then as soon as I was lapping my income from Guitar Center, then I quit my job. And then, hooray, freelancing. But this happy face is deceiving because it's not always happy face. But it was a lot better than doing Guitar Center and then writing or producing at night. Doing both at the same time was really hard, but I had to do that to ensure my financial security, right? But yeah, and now I do a bunch of other things. While I started producing meditation tracks. I don't do that as much anymore. I mainly, if I'm producing at all, it is for artists. Today, in 2024, my main sources of income come from audio. That could be editing podcasts. That could be editing music. That could be composing. That could be monitoring live audio. That could be suggesting equipment for a audio thingy. I also do some writing, but I've whittled it down to where it's mainly for music production blogs or creative spaces, that sort of thing. I'm pretty selective with who I take with writing. I've also been kind of conscious on taking less writing jobs because I feel like I've seen some of that get taken over by AI. So yeah, caution to the wind with that one. And then I'm also, this is just me, I am often helping out on sets or just looking for random things to do in person. I think most of the stuff I'm doing at home, I knew it was important for me to find ways that I could do stuff in person. My sometimes category. My sometimes is producing music. So for indie artists, though I'm very selective with that, that's a whole nother video. Sometimes I get like a sync brief. I haven't really gotten any major placements, but sometimes you'll get a fee for submitting. You'll get a demo fee. So that's a thing. I used to do much more producing music specifically as a part of my income, but I much rather leave the music producing for my artist projects. Sometimes I'm dog sitting. I'm very selective with this now. I used to do it a lot more, but there are some clients that yes, absolutely. And this is just a bunch of other random things. This is supposed to be my laptop, but I've learned how to do like some graphic design and like learning some other programs within and outside the Adobe suite that I had not known before. I've gotten a lot better at video editing. I've started to learn about like basic motion graphics. So there's a lot there that I could expand into if I put the work into learning. But then I think it's also important to talk about my etc. category, right? This all seems really cool right now, but it always, like, over the past couple of years, it always hasn't been this cool. I've done a lot of random jobs, and I am very flexible and willing to pick up just about anything that doesn't compromise my values if it means that I can keep living my lifestyle. So I've sold organic potatoes for a company. I used to write specifically on finance. I used to write specifically on weddings. What? This is supposed to be a knife. I used to write about kitchen equipment. So interesting. I worked for two startups, which basically means that I worked for VC. And then this is, I used to sometimes do social media for people. I have done this like fairly recently, but it's really not my favorite thing to do. I generally like social media is cool. Like I'll do it to connect with my people, but doing it on a brand's behalf is not my preference, but you might be different. So definitely a viable option there. I also think it's really important to talk about my lifestyle, okay? Because I get to do a lot of cool things as a freelancer, but it's not the most lucrative. I make $50K-ish each year, okay? It switches. My CNBC video said that I made like 40 something K, but the year after that I made like 60K. So like it changes, it shifts. That's another thing about being a freelancer. Like times are a changing. You have to be okay either with savings and just mentally with having such a dynamic situation. I split rent with my partner, which I'm very lucky to do. We're in a rent stabilized apartment, which we are very lucky to have. And before that was a thing, I split rent across roommates. So yes, I could not afford to live on my own with my income in New York City. I have to budget. I cannot spend with reckless abandon. I think that's similar for many people in America, but yes, this is important. And another thing is I really love passion projects, whether that's making my own music or making little videos like this. I love free time and I know how to make it worth my while. I think freelancing is worth it for me because I get this freedom, and like during slow periods, I can still make great use, or what I perceive as great use, of that time. I really think you have to have a strong why behind freelancing because there are some significant sacrifices, which we'll get into later. Okay, so now let's talk about how to get your first client in the eyes of me. First and foremost, you kind of have to be open. You might not get that beautiful dream fun job on the first time. You probably won't. So look for things that are adjacent to what you're going for, but don't have to be exactly what you're looking for. For example, I thought it would be really cool to write for music blogs. I started writing blogs. I thought it would really be cool to use some of my production skills for other artists or brands. I started producing meditation music. What's your back door? What can you provide? The more specialized you can get, the better, because often the more specialized is the more in demand situation. It's also really tricky, but I have found it to be true that the more desired a career path or a job is, the higher the barrier of entry is. So if there is something that's perceived as boring by the outside world that you actually just really enjoy, like, go for that, because most likely there's going to be some demand there. Okay, next. You don't have a portfolio. You got to start small. So that means either volunteering and doing some work purely for experience and to meet contacts. That means creating your own test jobs. That means you might have to do some extra work to get your first job, whether that's making a video resume instead of your typical written resume, or meeting someone in person, going to events where you can meet people within your field, talking them up, that sort of thing. The hardest part is getting your in and getting your first job. But you kind of have to simp over your first client. So that means being a lot of times going above and beyond. This is assuming you're starting from absolutely nothing, no experience at all, going above and beyond for a fairly low rate. The idea is that you get that job as a stepping stone, and then once you build a portfolio with these awesome reviews, which make people trust you and your business, then you start upgrading your rate. Really, really important. Once you get to a point where you have done a bunch of jobs, it's clear you have a clientele, you have great examples of your work, it's up to you to set boundaries with your clients. It's very funny, but it is a common trope that the people who pay the least also ask for the most. You might find that to be true. I've found that to be true in some of my work, but just know that you are going to have to be a good self-advocate. I struggle with that all the time. Freelancing is one way to get really good at that trial by fire. Talk to people, ask around, say you're interested in these things, show projects that you've worked on by yourself. You have to be really curious, and you have to put yourself out there to get that first job. And like any job, really, I'm constantly learning new things. I think one of the reasons why this lifestyle works so well for me is that I naturally get kind of antsy when I'm doing the same thing for too long. So it forces me to learn new skills. It forces me to talk to new people, which I just generally enjoy. Once you finally get your first client, you obviously want to do an outstanding job leading up to whatever you're doing, whatever the task. Read up on your subject, learn, make sure you're doing it to the best of your abilities, and then some. Get that glowing review. At this stage in the process, I think Mr. Krabs' "we shall never deny a guest, even the most ridiculous request" applies, because you are really going for that golden review. When you're first getting your initial clients, like, you unfortunately do not have leverage. So you really need a nice review to give you some. And yeah, do an outstanding job and then rinse and repeat. It sounds easy. It's not. It takes practice and time and persistence, which is why I recommend waiting to jump from anything and hustle in the off hours, because you're going to need a client base before you can even think about going full-time freelance. For example, I'm full-time. At any point, I can have between 4 to 8 clients. Granted, maybe it's just writing 1 or 2 blog articles a week for a client, but still, just goes to show you my eggs are in different baskets. I think that's the other thing about being a freelancer is, as much as you can diversify your income, do that because it will protect you. Clients have changes all the time. It might not even be personal. They might just not need your work anymore. They might ghost you. That happens. The job might just be completed. So you have to be prepared for losing people at a moment's notice. But the plus side is if you diversify your income, if a client starts not being your favorite, or maybe you're just not interested in the work anymore, you have just as much leverage to say like, hey, thanks for this experience, but I'm going to go now. So that is a pretty great freedom as well. So yeah, if I was starting from day one, those are the things I would do. But now that we've gone over that, I want to talk about the less glamorous aspects of being a freelancer, because I think if you're seriously considering this path, it's just something you have to know. It's not as sexy to talk about as being your own boss and, all the things you see promised across this platform and so many others. I think the biggest thing is that not every freelance job you're going to have is going to be amazing. I think a lot of us get in this path because we're tired of the corporate people lifestyle and having to be less of who we are, or whatever that means. Maybe you just want more flexibility because of the lifestyle you want to lead. But that being said, the jobs aren't always beautiful. In my case, like a really cool composition project or working with a super cool client. A lot of times the podcasts I'm editing maybe aren't even in something that I'm interested in. You'll often find quickly that even if you're escaping the corporate grind in some ways, in others, it's still very much there, in that a lot of the titans of industry or whatever are where a lot of the money is concentrated. And sometimes you have to balance your more creative, fulfilling work with that work that maybe isn't as interesting. I don't have a huge problem with that because I'm a musician, so I'm used to separating the ways I make money from my passion. I really like freelancing because it gives me the freedom, if inspiration strikes, to go after that inspiration. I'm filming this video in the middle of a Thursday, which wouldn't be possible in most 9-to-5 settings. I think you also have to be open. There are a ton of people who want to be just audio engineers or just music producers or just writers. And while you can do that, you're going to be a lot more secure, especially in the long term, if you stay more open to learning new skills and also just trying your hand at adjacent industries. I honestly think this is what has given me some more longevity, especially over the course of the pandemic. Another thing that will keep you sustainable is saving money. It's really important to have an emergency fund. So try and build up like 3 months of buffer if you can. I mean, that's hard for many people regardless of what you do, but if you can, that's going to make it so much easier to weather out the slow periods. And even if you're doing a great job, you're constantly going to need to apply to things. And as I talked about in this video, applying to things is challenging in today's landscape. So part of what I mean by that is you're always going to have to talk to people in person. You're always going to want to network to some degree or keep your ears open for different opportunities. Freelance cliche is feast or famine. It's not the most relaxing lifestyle always. So you got to be prepared to really seek things out over and over, constantly reinventing what your work looks like. Keeping track of your taxes and receipt bookkeeping. I'm in a mid to lower tax bracket, so I budget taking 30% of whatever I earn and putting it in a separate account so that I can pay my quarterly taxes. People who earn more might have to set aside more. I also spend a lot on my passions and things that are related to my work, so I have to keep track of those expenses for deductions. There's also the sacrifice of health benefits, though let's be real, a lot of jobs in the United States do not provide a great amount of these anymore. So, oof. Also, retirement. There's so many things to think about. Freelancing can be great, but I am a young son of a gun, right? Maybe this wouldn't be feasible for me if I had a family or a chronic health condition. There's just all these things that you have to think about that cost a lot of money. Freelancing comes with a lot of sacrifice in that regard. And then, of course, just being accountable, right? You are your own boss. You are the person who's going to motivate you to go and do the work. You are admin. You are boots on the ground, talking with the client. You are doing the actual work. There's all these different components. If I was starting from day one, I would first look at what is popping off industry-wise. And in the age of AI, this is changing a lot. I suggest looking in whatever area you are, making a daily habit of looking at a job board, whether that's on like a freelance site or just Googling jobs near me, doing newest first and looking at the themes of what comes up again and again. For example, something that I don't really enjoy, so I don't know if I would apply for, but I see all the time is people always want those who can create short form content, post on a regular cadence, create content for businesses. So maybe start with that. Think of, even if you haven't done it for a business, have you done that for yourself? Could you do it for a friend? Could you make a sample to pitch yourself? If you can, I would also mix in whatever your freelance work composition is with some in-person jobs. The remote flexibility is one of the main perks of being a freelancer, but as more and more of our landscape becomes digitized, I think in-person networking is a huge differentiation and way that you can set yourself with a good foundation. You really do have to know people and get to know people in order to be sustainable. So again, it's not a good fit for everyone. I would not leave my stable job or situation until I had an emergency fund of at least 3 months, if possible, just in the bank, ready to go. And I would start doing what I can to learn new skills. You have to be curious and go out there and believe in your ability to learn new things. Ask people you know if there's an industry that they're in, if you can shadow them, see what it's like before you start. If you're having trouble getting your first initial paid work, maybe see if you can volunteer, apprentice. This can be a slippery slope, though. We don't want to do too much work for free, but sometimes when you're really, really, really just starting out, you do kind of have to stick your neck out, but think of it more as a learning experience than the actual job. When you're in that stage, you don't want to be quitting your full-time thing. But yes, Hopefully that was somewhat helpful for someone. My feelings on freelancing switch all the time, but I get asked about this a lot, so I thought I'd talk about it. It comes with a lot of amazing benefits and a lot of challenges. So, yeah. Anyway, if you have any more questions, feel free to ask them below. Thank you so much for watching. I feel so lucky to have a little forum where I can talk about things. So, yeah, thank you. And yeah, I'll see you later. Bye.